Hey, everybody. Hello, and welcome to One Question with Pastor Adam. And I am Adam, and I am pastor to believers and to doubters, to unfaithful Christians and to faithful atheists. And Jesus wasn't afraid of questions, and neither are we here at One Question with Pastor Adam. And so we're going to ask some questions. And today's question comes straight to us from one of my dear friends, Matthew Distefano. And earlier this week, Matthew messages me and says, "Hey, I saw your TikTok on weed." I did it on 420, so that was like many months ago. So I don't know. Matthew's like behind the times on my TikTok. What, Matthew? Come on, let's speed up a little bit here. So I did that on 420 because somebody was like, "Hey, what's the deal with weed in the Bible?" And I had 60 seconds of talk. That's all I could do. So Matthew came and messaged me and said, "Hey, I got more for you." So Matthew is our special guest today, and I'm going to bring him up on. So here we go, everybody. Hello, my friend.
Hey, I just saw that TikTok. That's not my fault. The gods of the algorithms decided to show that to me
I,
recently.
let's. I love blaming to the TikTok algorithm. That's like
Mm.
that's my thing. That's my jam.
Or,
So
or I'm just a pothead and
that's
we operate slower.
whatever works. I think that's awesome. So friends, if you have comments or questions today about this topic or any topic concerning religion and spirituality and weed, or whatever, let's go ahead
Or
and
whatever.
or whatever let's go ahead and hop into it. So yeah, I was just explaining how I did this video. It was 60 seconds, and I think basically I was like, "Hey, Genesis 1, God says God creates everything, all the plants and animals and stuff, and calls it good. And so let's not scapegoat weed." Right? And
Well,
so
I think
I
so. Yeah.
there are like plants that are poisonous for us, and so not every plant is good for us, I would imagine, right? But use your discretion. That was like the gist of what I said, and you contacted me and said there's so much more to say, so let's say it. Let's do it.
Yeah, well, I know the retort whenever you bring up Genesis 1 is like, well, you're not going to eat hemlock or oleander, are you? Well, of course not, right? We know
Yeah.
those are not good for you. Yeah, let's talk about it. I think these days probably Christians have maybe overall less of a strong opinion on it than I think back when I was like growing up. Like you definitely did not smoke weed. It's definitely a sin. And there's probably a lot of Christians who are still there. But I think it's one of those things where most people understand it's all about discretion. The same could
Yeah.
be said about anything, right?
Yeah. Yeah.
Um, I mean, food, drink, sugar, salt, gambling, right? I mean, sports betting, like whatever it is, like we do kind of have addictive tendencies, regardless of whatever the substance or behavior is.
That's right. Greetings, Josh. All of this seems very interesting already. So, Josh,
Yeah.
if you've got insights on today's topic, feel free to put those in the chat section. So, yeah, I mean, when I was growing up, it was, weed was like I, very much a sin, as you
Hmm.
mentioned. But as I grew up, I started discovering, well, actually, like if we're talking about things that are more harmful for us, like alcohol is far more harmful than weed is and causes much more destruction than weed does, and many drugs too. So I
Yeah, which of course isn't an argument for marijuana per se, but I see your point. Like you can't have a get together without alcohol. Like if you had a party and no one had alcohol, like it would be like, oh, were you at Adam's party? Yeah, it was sucked, right? Like, right. And they I mean, you can't watch a commercial without, yeah, or like a sporting event without commercials. Like it's thrown in our face all the time. And then like people honest, there are still some people walking around as if like Reefer Madness was a documentary on the flip side. Like you're like, really? You're still living in that mindset where marijuana is like the devil's lettuce. it's
the
it's
devil's
it's
lettuce.
it's
Yeah.
it's odd. So to me it's more of a cultural thing than it is anything, right?
Yeah, yeah. Marty says medical marijuana patient here, and so thank God for whatever it is that helps our bodies to
Yeah.
feel better and doing it in a safe way. And so, Marty, I'm so glad that you're here and that the medical marijuana has helped you. And so, yeah, and also, so where do we want to go with this, Matthew?
You could
So
go anywhere.
there's
It's as we could go in as diverse of a plant as it is. We could go in that direction.
okay, yeah.
So I
So
mean, we could
the
talk
other
about
thing,
Go for it. Sorry.
the only other thing that I said in that video was that there is a plant in the Bible beyond Genesis chapter 1 that is a drug and is used in the Bible. What is it called? It's escaping me. I will Google and find it. But
Well, there's
it is used, and I think
cannabosum.
that's cannabosum. That's not the
I
word
mean,
that.
oh,
Go ahead.
no, I was just going to say cannabosum. I don't know if I'm saying it correctly in Hebrew
Sure.
because I'm not a Hebrew scholar. But some have argued that that is not supposed to be calamus. It's supposed to be cannabis, probably hemp, which was in the anointing oil in Exodus 30.
Oh, okay.
So Sula Benet was a Polish anthropologist. I think she was the first to argue that it should be cannabis that's in there. And I have talked to at least one Hebrew scholar and said we can't know for sure what it is, but it's it's probably more likely that it's hemp in the anointing oil than calamus, just based on what we know about plants. But
Okay. Do we know what that would do? Why it was in the anointing
Well,
oil?
I
Or?
mean, so when you talk about cannabis, like when we talk about weed, we're talking about like marijuana. It has THC. That's the psychoactive ingredient, right? But we see hemp all over the place, CBD. So that also has that has no psychoactive properties. So you can give hemp to like dogs, CBD creams. You've got all these sort of things, and they're medicinal. In America, we don't study it as much as we should because we've scheduled it Schedule 1, which means it has no medicinal property. And it's super addictive. So when a drug is Scheduled 1 in America, you don't have research money. So that's been a part of it. But what we do know from research is that, yeah, I mean, it can help with burns and wounds. It can help with muscles and aches and joints and pain. So as an oil, if they burned it as incense, calming properties, I mean, it can help. I've heard it help with anxiety. Of course, marijuana can also cause anxiety. It depends on you, and it depends on your set and your setting and your mindset. So from what I understand, it has a lot more medicinal properties than calamus, which maybe there are some, but certainly not to the extent of cannabis.
Okay. Yeah, this is all way over my head, but it's fascinating. So, mandrakes are the biblical drug that I was thinking of. Mandrakes. It is, so here is, this is from the israelbible.com.
Okay.
And it's found in Genesis chapter 30, verse 14, which says this: once at the time of the wheat harvest, Reuben, one of the children of Jacob, Israel, came upon some mandrakes in the field and brought them to his mother Leah. And Rachel said to Leah, "Please give me some of your son's mandrakes." Now, why are mandrakes so important in the Bible? Because this will give you a sense. The title of this article is "Mandrakes Are the Biblical Love Plant."
Okay.
So
what
the
did they
reason,
suggest it is specifically?
right? Yes. So the reason that Rachel wants Leah's mandrakes is because Rachel is wanting to have a child. So she's wanting to, get it on. And so these mandrakes, if you Google, you will discover that mandrakes are a drug, and the root of the mandrake is a aphrodisiac. And so you take the drug and you start making babies.
And you start writing Song of Solomon.
You start writing Song of Solomon. That's right. So, hi, Jeff. Good to see you. So Joshua says, regulation, in my opinion, is the elephant in the room. Substances are not the problem. The issue is one of miseducation, greed, and stubbornness. Do you have any thoughts on that, Matthew?
That's true about everything. Like,
Yeah.
I mean, yeah, we even when we regulate things, we probably misregulate them. And I think when it comes down to, okay, we can, most rational people, I think, can agree that, hey, people should do what they want as long as it doesn't harm others. It comes down to, I think, political and philosophical, like how we as a society go about managing it, right?
Yeah.
Because we certainly don't want, like, we don't want people to use to abuse things. But how do we put systems in place to get to for us to find balance? And so that's, I mean, I guess that's the ultimate question on, but that's more about probably policy. um, I think we'll find a way, even in the cannabis industry, like in California, it's been legal for a while, but the way it's regulated is now pushing out small mom and pop shops and making it to where only corporate marijuana and big marijuana is probably going to come down the pike. You know it. And that's our corporatist society. That's, again, not the substance itself. It's how we regulate it. And if I had to guess, most places are going to regulate it to benefit corporations and politicians, and to squash competition from, like, the local mom and pop store who might have a small grow and local organic farmers or something. I bet we're going to mess that up.
So we've got justice issues. We've got economic issues
Yeah, we've got
surrounding all of life, including
all of it.
Yeah, including this. Yes. Yeah.
Yep.
Jeff says the root of the mandrake plant is supposed to look like a miniature human being.
I'm gonna have to check that
I
out.
had no idea. Apparently, the mandrake grows mostly in the Middle East, and so I'm not familiar with the mandrake. I don't know. It sounds like you're not all that familiar with the mandrake either, Matthew. So,
No, sir.
So yeah, if anybody else has experience with the mandrake, Jeff, I know Jeff's mind is like a Google machine, and so Jeff might just know that the mandrake root looks like a human being. But
Yeah.
Jeff, if you have any other experience with mandrakes, I would love to learn about that. So, what I'm hearing from you, Matthew, is that you are no longer thinking that weed or drugs are a sin, like how you grew up learning that it was. Would that be fair to say?
Well, if it is, I like to sin quite often. No, I mean, look, I think, you know me, I don't necessarily think in those terms anymore. But if we're going to use the word, well, I mean, we're triggered by so many words, and it carries with it so much baggage but it, devoid of all that, it's a fine word to use. I would never necessarily say sin is behavior A, B, C, and D. Like, I think more abstractly now. I don't know what's good for you, Adam. I don't know you. I know you pretty well, but not well enough. I don't know if Adam should smoke weed or use cannabis, right? You don't have to smoke it. I just vernacular, right?
Okay.
But you don't know if it's good for me, and we have to answer that for ourselves and in community, and talk about these things, right? And, like, figure out what's best for ourselves in the world, so that we're more empathetic and compassionate and loving towards our neighbor. And if it helps us with that, great. If alcohol helps you with that, maybe that's great. But the danger is that a lot of things don't. For some people, they should never use cannabis. They'll have terrible reactions to it, or it'll have the opposite effect that it does on me personally. And then you have to answer that for yourself and say, is this causing sin? If that's the language you use.
Okay. What language would you use these days?
I use probably more like social worky type language. Does it cause trauma? Does it does it, that sort of language, more psychological language rather than religious language? It depends on who you're talking to also. And this as a pastor, is like, you kind of want to meet people where they're at and kind of use the language that they're familiar with. If Christians that go to church every Sunday come to you, you're probably going to talk to them different than if I came to you and was like, hey man, help me out with this. You're not going to talk to them the same way you would talk, and that you'd be a good pastor. So I mean, we don't go to church. We don't identify with one religion or the other. We're not raising our daughter Christian. So we would use that kind of, like, Is it causing trauma in your life? Is it causing you to be a better
Mm,
human? Is it causing you, it's very anthropological. Is it causing you to love others, or is it causing you to recoil? Are you using it to hide something or to push something away that you should be addressing? Like you have to answer all those things anytime you're going to use anything.
I like that. Is it harming you, or is it harming others? Is it hiding things that
Mm-hmm.
you would be better off dealing with?
Yeah.
That makes a lot of sense to me. Yeah.
Yeah.
Wentemi, hi, good to see you, Wentemi. Wentemi's making me laugh. Jeff says, and I think going back to mandrakes maybe, and they are supposed to scream when you yank them out of the ground.
It's terrifying.
For magical purposes, they should be harvested at night, maybe under a full moon. Not sure about that part. Okay, source, the Encyclopedia of Occultism.
Okay, there you go.
All right, thank you, Jeff. Thank you. What? So, uh, are there? Speaking of magical purposes,
Mm-hmm.
do you know anything about the Bible and these kinds of drugs and how they may have been used for things that we might think about as magical purposes today? Is there any connection there that you might know of? Um,
I mean, some people have made that argument, like the burning bush. They've made an argument of a certain type of plant that is a psychoactive plant that burns a certain red. I don't know when it's time to harvest, maybe. Um, the way people have
so
described
Moses learned the name of God
y-
from the burning bush.
from the burning, but yeah, I mean, I would. Some people have suggested that like manna from heaven may have been mushrooms.
Okay.
And then you take that and you go meet God face to face, right? And you come up with stuff like I am the great I am or something. I don't I've taken mushrooms and I can tell you that the kind of the blending between the reality and the absurd, or it gets really weird.
Okay.
To where you like I did mushrooms one time where you kind of have this like disembodiment of yourself and your ego, and you have no reference point to describe your own self, so it's like a disassociation in a way.
Huh.
So I could see like if I could see doing that and like trying to come back to explain things, like coming up with some really obscure language like that. I don't know if it's true or not. um you know i I'm a hard evidence person. Before I like the Bible says this and this is what they were really meant. I mean, it's okay to speculate, I think, but
Yeah.
I'm sure that yes, throughout our history, ancient societies that began in the Middle East were experimenting with all sorts of things and figuring out, they had a lot of practices. They were burning a lot of incense and doing
Uh,
all sorts of oils and stuff. Something was psychoactive in all that.
that's awesome. Okay. Good. So Todd says five guys get drunk and start a fight. Five guys get stoned and start a band.
Yeah, and then they never practice.
Lloyd gives LOL to Todd, and yeah, never practicing. That's awesome too. Jeff says, "What about other plants used in religious purposes? Amanita mushrooms,
Yeah,
peyote, psilocybin mushrooms. Did I pronounce that correctly? I don't know, but
psilocybin. I mean, it's magic mushrooms.
okay.
Amanita muscara is the incidentally in all those Disney movies with the red mushroom with the white dots, the big capped mushroom that are drawn in all
Uh,
the cartoons. That's an Amanita muscara, and that's a psychoactive mushroom.
oh, Disney,
It,
evil Disney.
you're gonna rethink your whole childhood, dude. Go back and watch all that.
It's like the Disney VHS covers
Yep.
that had all of those phallic symbols
Yeah.
on it.
They put the mushrooms in there too.
That's awesome. That's awesome.
Well, I mean,
Okay.
what's the question specifically? I'm for people experimenting or responsibly and respecting everything. Like if you're gonna do ayahuasca, go to an actual shaman, not some, make sure it's not sketchy because there's always grifters and always hucksters out there. Like you have to I think you don't just do drugs to party and all that. Like, you have to revere what they are. Like, if you believe in God and you believe God created everything, then they're there for a purpose. So let's not be flippant and capricious with any of it, because they all seem to have peyote. There's certain type of cacti. There's all sorts of things. Treat everything with respect and honor and reverence. Don't take a bunch of mushrooms and go to a rock concert and think everything's going to be okay, because it might not be.
Except for mosquitoes, just kill those bastards.
Mosquitoes and flies that get in my house.
Yes. All right. So yeah, Jeff, I think like I like that a lot. And I've heard of particularly white folk wanting to go on their journey with Native American or indigenous religious and spirituality. And it's always important to not, appropriate.
Right. Yeah. And if you're going to do it, like, understand all the things that go behind it. It's like, don't just, I think that's the difference between like appropriation and then like, you can be a guest in someone's house. I always like, I'm a hip hop head, but I know I'm a guest in Black folks' house.
Mm-hmm.
You know what I mean? So it's going to be a part of my culture, but I understand that this is not, it's a part of me. That culture is a part of who I am because it's how I grew up, and I like that culture, but I always know I'm a guest. Same thing when it comes to like, if I'm going to go do some sort of do peyote in the desert, like, don't do some white folk stuff. Like, like learn the whole thing. Like, learn why you're doing it and the history of it and the motivation behind it, and find the right folks to help you.
Yep, absolutely. Friends, thank you for being here. If you have comments or questions, put those in the chat section. Joshua says, how do we implement systems? I believe in reminding and teaching people that there are two options to consider: individually, intuitively, and analytically, and collectively, the whole gamut. And it can get really messy and detailed. I also think there are numerous factors to consider, and I believe empathy, reciprocity, and compassion will triumph in the end while remaining realistic about this world. Any thoughts about that?
It's all complicated. If we have all of that, but what you just said is not interesting politically in the way our current climate is, because it's nuanced. And it's, you know what I mean? We're so have a strong opinion one way or the other, rather than, no, this whole thing is complicated and involves the individual and the collective and all these things. And you lost most people with that, which is unfortunate, because these conversations are what you just said. And in the political climate, it gets difficult. You either got to be like, are you pro marijuana? Or are you against it? And I'm like, well, politically, obviously, I would not make it illegal. But I would also say, well, it doesn't mean it's for everyone. So we need to have those conversations like that.
Yeah. That's good. Anna Lee says, if no one's psychosis is triggered, I think that's where I was going to say, how did we say it earlier? Good judgment, or knowing yourself and how you might respond to things, and understanding who you are and stuff.
Yeah, and I think what they're referring to is, I think there are some incidences where mushrooms don't know if it's causative or correlative, where I think schizophrenia may be triggered. I think saying that affirmatively would be, I think the studies are still, we need more studies, which, again, going back to policy, like, these drugs cannot be labeled Schedule 1, because then we'll never be able to study them. We need more research that goes into what is the relation between some of these drugs and schizophrenia. Well, we certainly need more data on that, but let's be really cautious. But it's something to consider, because we have maybe seen at least some correlation between the two.
Okay. All right. When Temi brings up Alice in Wonderland and is LOLing out loud, do you have any thoughts on Alice in Wonderland and this topic?
Well, my publishing company published Alice's Adventures in Wonderland as a republish, if everyone wants to go read it.
Okay.
Can I shamelessly plug that?
Please do. Shamelessly plug whatever you would like.
I like Lewis Carroll. I haven't read him as diligently as some people. I know David Bentley Hart is a huge fan of Lewis Carroll. Yeah, I think that I don't know if drugs were involved, but I wouldn't be surprised.
Right. David Bentley Hart is a major theologian that Matthew and I are both fans of. Why would David Bentley Hart is an Eastern Orthodox theologian, big on universal salvation. So he's probably the biggest name if you want to understand universal salvation and how it has been part of the Christian faith from the very beginning. He's probably the prime person to go to. Why do you think that he is interested in Alice in Wonderland?
You'd have to read the foreword to the book we published.
Did he write the foreword?
Yeah, he did.
He did. Okay.
Right. Yeah, that's all I'll say about it.
Okay. I will get the book. That's awesome. Okay. Let's see. Joshua, what are your thoughts on microdosing and the return of psychedelics in the news? I have no idea how to answer that question.
Yeah, so I think they're using microdosing to microdosing small doses of psilocybin mushrooms. Probably other, but the one I've heard of is mushrooms, but there's probably other microdosing of other substances. I think, for instance, like hunters in some tribes would suck on the cocoa leaves, and it, it's like microdosing cocaine, right? What we use for cocaine. But I think using it to treat PTSD, for instance, especially for veterans coming back from war, combat veterans, there's promising studies, from what I understand, that shows that it can help with symptoms of PTSD. I know that LSD was floated as like the 13th step of AA to help in that way. But yeah, I think, I'm all for it. Again, back to a clinical setting, I think all of these substances can be used. And the more we learn, the more we'll narrow in on how to properly dose for certain things and to titrate up and down based on the individual. Yeah. And I'm all for it, because it's complete garbage that we would just toss out a plant because some people might trip on them. Like, I also know people who drink too much and then haul off and beat their family. Like, do we then make it illegal to drink? Well, I wouldn't say that's the answer either. Being Girardians, we would understand just prohibiting a bunch of stuff doesn't really work, does it?
Yeah. And drinking and driving causes a lot of pain and a lot of death, and so a lot of problematic things. When Temi says drugs to me are man-made, plants aren't drugs. This kind of reminds me of like what I was thinking about earlier. Like, I took ibuprofen earlier today because I was starting to get a headache. And there's nothing wrong with ibuprofen. It changes something in my body so that I don't have a headache anymore. Right. But that's a man-made drug or a man or human enhanced drug. I don't even know how to talk about this stuff, but there's like a difference between ibuprofen and maybe a mandrake that you might just find somewhere that's planted and take. I don't know if you have thoughts on that comment.
Yeah, and I wouldn't want to flip it too far. So what if it is made? So what if drugs are made by people? Like, drugs are great. Like, drugs are fantastic. Does that mean Big Pharma is fantastic? No. but drugs are fantastic. Like, there's like a lot of drugs are really good and help a lot of people. So and then there's a lot of plants, again, that like aren't good, and we can abuse plants all the time. And so again, it's finding balance. And I mean, a lot of it comes down to just language and meaning, and meanings change as we go. Like, is it a drug? Is it a plant? Sometimes it's both. Sometimes there's drugs in plants, like there's caffeine in plants, and caffeine, I would say, is a drug. It's a stimulant. And you will, when you go off of caffeine, as I did years ago, you'll have a headache. That's called a withdrawal. Like, you're having some sort of withdrawal effect. And your serotonin levels they're off, right? Like, you go off of it and then you're back to normal, but it doesn't feel so good. You have a headache and you get you're short with people and you have anxiety, whatever, that 10 days off of caffeine, kind of sucks. It's not terrible, but
Uh, Luke says drugs are good. They come from God. I like the plants and the drugs. And
yeah.
yes. So Joshua says this will take us in maybe a slightly different direction, but we might be able to have a conversation about this too. Joshua says, as far as politics goes, and then Joshua quotes where Jesus says, "Give to Caesar the things that are Caesar's, and give to God the things that are God's." I love that quote from Jesus, in part because of the context from within the Bible that it's written. And we typically think that this is like Jesus doing the whole separation of church and state thing,
Right.
which is not what Jesus is doing.
Right.
I don't think anyway. So I don't know if you have any thoughts on that passage, or we could do a whole podcast episode on what
Yeah.
Jesus meant and didn't mean from that passage. But
I mean, it's hard for me to always say what someone means or didn't mean. What I take from it is that it's almost like you live in the system that is, and we can be ideological, which I've been a lot in my life, like super ideological about something. And then you could be a little more pragmatic. So it's like, yeah, if you're good, it's kind of like when Paul talks about, I think it's Romans 13, talks about the government. And
yeah,
it's like, I think, no, there's a certain aspect of like, yeah, don't be pragmatic here. Like, pay your taxes. Because, I mean, does that mean we should tax the hell out of people? Unfairly, unjustly throughout history, we've taxed the poor higher than the rich. Lo and behold, we still do. But also, like, if you don't, then you're gonna have the IRS on you. You're gonna have this. So it's like, yeah, give to Caesar's what is Caesar's. You live in this system, so play by the rules. But also, like, Jesus was a rabble rouser too, and he broke the rules. And so I think it's like sometimes life does look contradictory, but because you approach things differently in different contexts and different situations. And that's just being pragmatic sometimes. And sometimes it's time to be a little more ideological and flip a table.
yeah, yeah. I see Jesus being a little rabble rousing in this passage too.
Mm-hmm.
Like if you're a first century Jew, what Jesus is quoting, there are passages in Genesis and in the Psalms. I forget which one it is.
Yeah.
But it says that the earth and everything in it belongs to God.
Right.
Right. So when Jesus's opponents are coming to them and they're like showing him the coin, and it says it's got Caesar's image on it, right?
Right.
And then they throw it at Jesus. Jesus says, show me a coin, right? Well, what are they doing when they're holding up the image of Caesar on the coin? They're going against the first commandment,
Right.
the second commandment, where
Right.
it says, "You shall have no graven images." So right there, Jesus is like showing his opponents for the kind of frauds that they are, right? Because they are constantly using religion as a weapon against others, but they're, as you say, caught up in the systems of oppression.
It's just, yeah.
Right there, and they are holding up the coin that has Caesar's image on it, and you're not supposed to do that. And so when Jesus says, "Give to Caesar the things that are Caesar's, and to God the things that are God's," in a first century Jewish mindset, you are probably going to be thinking everything belongs to God. The earth and everything in it belongs to God.
Yeah.
Right. And so there's a little bit of like a jujitsu move that Jesus is doing here with it. I mean, as you say, like, yeah, we should pay our taxes, and we should also know that our taxes belong to God. And when all of our taxes, or most of our taxes, are used to support the military industrial complex, I care about that. Right.
Yeah.
I would much rather have something like universal basic income or universal basic housing for people than have my taxes go towards a war machine that is just going to make the world worse.
Oh, see, and that's when he would be a rabble rouser for sure. And I think also in that path, he's being totally sarcastic. Like, yeah, okay, give to Caesar what's like, go fuck, like, do it. That's his. That's his image. You put it up there. It's almost like when he says, like, your scriptures say so.
Mm-hmm.
Like when he does stuff like that. Well, that's what you say.
Uh-huh.
So yeah, you got the coin, you got the image on there, you pay your taxes, you do your thing, blah blah blah, give to him. In the back of his mind, he probably does know that, and he's of course knows that, and so do they. It's
Yeah.
almost like a wink. Well, everything belongs to God, but you do you, boo, right?
Yep. 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 And in a certain sense, while they are playing by the system,
Mhm.
they are owned by Caesar. Like they
Yeah,
are showing this coin, and Caesar is more important to them than their following of their religious rules, which is
and
what
then
they have
yeah,
been, which is what
and
they
then
like try to impose upon everybody else. Anybody hearing a certain strand of Christianity today, trying to impose your religion on
mhm.
everybody else,
Yeah,
while you are completely failing at loving. We completely fail at loving our neighbor as we love ourselves. So,
yeah, and you just become a cog in the machine, and you keep pushing that
yep,
same thing over and over, which Jesus was totally against.
there you go, there you
Yeah,
go. So, and I include myself in that, obviously, as a Christian who often fails completely in loving neighbor as self.
oh,
So here's
definitely.
Marty saying, "I'm glad to see the renewed interest in psychedelics and their potential. I microdosed, there's that word again, psilocybin
Psilocybin.
mushrooms. There you go. I'm going to butcher that. For a month last year, it vanquished my depression, and the depression stayed away for over a year. Time to do that again.
Yeah, I mean, shoot, yeah,
There you go.
I'm all for
I
good medicine.
I went to the doctor. He gave me Wellbutrin to deal with my depression, and so whatever works
Yeah, and they don't
is
have to be. I think often we do this thing where even even like some progressives like myself, we do this thing where we pit the two against the other.
yeah,
It's like something that comes from big pharma or something that's natural. Natural seemed good and any pharmaceuticals seemed bad. And it's like, do you know how massive the natural industry is? Big natural, billion-dollar industry.
yeah,
So let's not get it twisted that again, going back to like systems can be corrupted. So what we should do, like you just said, if it's good medicine, whether it comes from a plant or whether it comes from a plant, two different types of meanings.
yeah, yeah.
Both can be good.
Yeah, yeah. No, I was listening to, I forget, some podcast on YouTube, and they were talking about how uh, basic medication, drugs,
Mhm.
that are used around the world are so much cheaper in, like Anali is coming to us from Sweden. Those drugs there are so much cheaper. And here in the United States, they're still like thousands and thousands of dollars,
Crazy.
right?
Yeah.
And here in the United States, we justify it, or big pharma justifies it by
Yeah.
saying, well, if we don't have it cost so much money, then we're not going to have any innovation in these drugs. And so we have to keep forcing Americans to spend thousands
It,
and thousands of dollars every month on medication that in other countries it is less than $100.
what's frustrating is that in other countries we have models of success that work for the people, and in America we just don't do it because we're corporatists, I guess, capitalists, like to a fault. And I think because we think of ourselves so highly that we wouldn't learn anything from those other countries. And it's
Right.
like, no, we have those and it's like, no, the rest of the world in many ways disproves so much of what we say. Like, oh, it can't be fixed or it can't be solved. It's like, no, literally, listen, other places like figured it out. Like, go tell people in Europe that we have advertisements in between every break for a show
Mm.
for drugs. For ask your doctor if this is right for you. It's like every single break on
Yeah.
Hulu. You get like three commercials. One of them is a advertisement for a drug, and people outside the United States are like, "What? That's wild," and we don't even think twice about it.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. And what's the drug that we see most? It's directed to men. What, I don't even know what it's called. The
It's the blue
sex drug for
pill,
men. The
Viagra.
blue pill. That's it.
It's the little blue pill. If you watch, yeah, any
Oh man.
podcast where men is the demographic, over 50% demographic, you're going to get those commercials.
Yeah. Yeah.
1,000%.
Yeah, yeah. When Temi brings up another excellent point, man-made drugs like fentanyl, meth, crack cocaine, etc. Fentanyl causing so many problems in here in the United States. Also comes primarily from over the border from China and other places. And it's another way that we have been able to scapegoat our South American friends by blaming them for fentanyl when it comes actually from mostly from other places. But there are these harder drugs. I don't know if that's the right way to frame it.
Sure.
That can be super, super dangerous. And regulating those. Should we regulate those harder drugs, those fentanyl drugs, those drugs that are causing all these problems?
Well, that one, have you heard the Trank one?
No.
It's like fentanyl with a cattle tranquilizer, and people are literally like slumped over in the streets like zombies, like Last of Us or something. You ever get a sneeze that you're about to sneeze?
I mean, part of surrounding this is obviously it's not the whole answer, but the lack of mental health care that we have in the United States.
Yeah, it's there's like 100 things that go into it. There's the lack of mental health care, the lack of health care in general. I think universal health care would go a long ways. There's also economic issues with it. There's I don't have I'm not a political policy person. I don't have a degree in politics or policy. I do know that we cannot. I don't think we can treat fentanyl, because fentanyl really, I mean, fentanyl is a problem even when it was totally regulated, right? I mean, opioids in general, like doctors were over prescribing them, and people were taking them from places like Kentucky and Ohio, flying them, or going to Florida where it's super deregulated, or was taking them back to Ohio, Kentucky, places like that. They called it the OxyContin Express. You know, so it's not just it really wasn't even a street drug. It was prescribed and then misused and misregulated. So I know we cannot treat marijuana, cannabis, psilocybin, peyote, because people aren't gonna do mushrooms and then end up like the people who are taking fentanyl. Like, I've never heard a story of like, dude, I was tripping on mushrooms and I became an addict. It's like, no, I took mushrooms and I haven't done them in 5 years, right? like I met the devil. I now don't need to go back, and I learned some things. So it's not like there's gonna be no addiction. I know my experience is not the same as everyone's, but we're not gonna see a crisis of a bunch of people on the streets tripping on mushrooms or something. So I know we can't treat all drugs alike just because we call them drugs.
Yeah. Yeah.
I know that's kind of a non-answer, but really it's like that's not what I'm studying on policy on how to fix it. I know we do have to have empathy and compassion. We have to have robust universal health care, including mental health care.
Yes.
I think we need to fund social work a lot more. I think social workers should be brought on police forces. I think there's a lot of things that we can do, and there's probably about 100 more.
Good. Love it. Luke says the solution is to legalize all of them and set up universal health care immediately and jail the executives profiting from the system. So,
well, there's a great point.
Yeah.
Criminalizing an addict is what good is that, right? So we make it illegal, and yet people get it, and then we criminalize the people who use it. It's like, no, you need to go after the profiteers, right?
Yep. All right. Well, I'm worried that I might lose my internet again. So maybe this is a good time to wrap up our conversation. And I've also lost comments on our system. So
That's a shame.
so
The devil doesn't want this to happen to you,
I
my
guess
friend.
not. I guess not. So any final comments? Anything that we missed from the Bible and drugs? There's not a whole lot there.
There's not.
Right?
There's not. there's a lot in the Bible about discernment and not judging others. So if someone smokes weed, I think Jesus said something about a speck and then a plank. And I think it's your own eye that's supposed to have the plank, buddy. So no matter what people are doing, have empathy for them. You're doing some stuff too. And have discernment in your own life. If it doesn't work for you, stop. If it does work for you, great. Read studies, like talk to your doctor, talk to other people, figure out what's right for you. It's all a learning experience, right?
That's it. That's life.
It took me 40 years to figure everything out. And now that I have, it's great, but it took me a while.
There you go. There you go. I did also see a comment in the chat section on my phone, thanking you for the elevator music while I was having my trip up to heaven, and came back, tell you all about it. You're all doing a great job. We're all doing the best we can in this world, and as Matthew says, yeah, the plank in our own eye, and not the splinter in the others. So that's
it's
great.
hard though, because I see some people, I'm like, these people.
I'm always like, mind your own business,
Yeah.
Adam. Mind your own business.
Yes.
So, if people come to me, this is like one of the weird things. When I was in seminary, I had a professor I think it was in my theology class, who said, "Those of you who are going to become pastors, you are spiritual doctors." And that always felt like way too high of a calling. I don't know.
Yeah.
It just felt really weird to me. But it has helped me as I've gotten older in ministry, understanding there are some spiritual sicknesses out there.
Yeah.
And the same way that we generally don't go to doctors, in part because of our horrible healthcare system. We don't go to doctors when we are sick. We also don't go to professionals when we're feeling a spiritual or a mental illness or a spiritual illness upon us. And that's a shame. In some sense, our Catholic siblings have it right when it comes to what is it? When they confession. When you can just go to somebody and confess, and know that you are going to be loved and accepted, and this person isn't going to look at all of the splinters or assume that you have motes in your eyes, and is just going to say, yeah, we've all been there. We've all been there.
That'd be great. And I like the doctor thing, because I mean, the first thing the doctor's got to say is do no harm.
Yeah.
So if pastors did that, we'd be doing
Well,
good.
I mean, the other thing is that we've got pastors out here who are thinking that they can diagnose everybody and go to them without people coming to them saying, I think there's something might be wrong with my spirituality, and I would like to get some help. What do you think? Right? Instead, we've got pastors and folk out here going out towards everybody, giving advice without people wanting it, and just pushes people further away from
Definitely.
whatever we want people to do or be like or whatever. So anyway, a little more humility in the religious sphere, especially in every sphere, especially when it comes to our topic today. So thank you for this, Matthew. Thank you.
Yeah, thanks for having me. Appreciate it.
Yep. Awesome. Always a good time. And thank you everybody for watching. Sorry for the technical difficulties. We'll see if this came out okay. In the end, we'll find out. So hope that you all, yes, Matthew, thank you for the elevator music. Nicely done. So everybody, hope you have a great rest of your day. You can keep up with One Question with Pastor Adam wherever you listen to your podcast. We are here live every Thursday at 11 o'clock Pacific on the Pastor Adam Facebook page and the Clackamas United Church of Christ Facebook page. If you have questions that you'd like us to go over here at One Question, you can send them to me on social media, or you can find my email online as well. So until next week, friends, God be with you.